Should I say happy anniversary?
Happy Liberation Day.
Is it happy? Because it was doom and gloom, and there were wild forecasts about upending the international economy, and maybe you'll tell me we did. What has happened to the global economy in 1 year of the president's tariff regime?
Well, we had a lot of tacos, so that for one. But I think that if we think about the president's speech about this time on the day after April Fool's Day, which he made sure to note when he announced all these tariffs, he said it would usher in a manufacturing renaissance here in the United States, that we would build things again in the United States. And in fact, if we look at the record over the past year, what has actually happened is we have lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs. We are losing construction jobs. We are in fact building fewer things in this country as a result, and it is much more expensive to build, given that his tariffs are on building materials, on steel forgings to manufacture things here in the U.S. Across the board, it has really increased prices for consumers and businesses alike. I think inflation is running anywhere between 0.5 point and a point higher than it otherwise would be if we didn't have Trump's tariffs on the books. And it had really erased a lot of the progress we had made on inflation in 2024. And unfortunately, we are seeing the Fed try to grapple with that. And now another twist in the story is, his war on Iran, which is further spiking prices.
Well, that's for sure. I'd like to ask you about that in a moment. But you remember what the forecasts were. And there was a thought that by August, maybe, once existing goods off the shelves had to be replenished, that we would see a massive spike in inflation. And if Peter Navarro were sitting here right now, he would tell us that, no, it's a one-time change in prices and inflation that does not make. But are you surprised that we're not many multiples higher than we are now?
I think it's a good question. One thing was that those forecasts baked in, Trump not turning the switch off and on and off and on and off and on, as we saw for most of the past year. Or the Supreme Court ruling.
So did the SCOTUS save us from ourselves?
I think it was really one of those things where had Trump kept in place the tariffs he announced 365 days ago, we would be in a very different situation. He ended up a couple days later turning many of those off, and you saw him negotiate quote unquote trade deals over the course of the past year. Many of those didn't actually go into effect. And obviously, given his now across the board 10% tariffs, we are looking at a different situation. I think what changed was that Trump ultimately didn't go through with it. There were lots of sectoral exemptions. There were country-specific exemptions. He changed Chinese tariffs many, many times over. Right. And the bulk of that, I think, as companies were able to increase their inventories by quite a lot leading up to Liberation Day, and in that short window where things were getting adjusted between April and July during his pause, we were able to keep things on the shelf that were a lot less tariff than they would have otherwise been. Of course, the Supreme Court stepped in last month and now, or at the end of February, and now we find ourselves in this kind of new order of this global tariff for the next 4.5 months or so. Right now, I think the bigger pressure facing the inflation picture is the war in Iran, which, the president's remarks last night, I don't think instilled a lot of confidence in markets or in consumers that we'll be out of the war anytime soon. We're
seeing the market unfold right before our eyes here. And, it's amazing. We couldn't have imagined in the Rose Garden. It wasn't the Rose Garden Club, I think, at that point yet, a year ago, that we would be in a war with Iran on the anniversary of Liberation Day. You've got crude oil up over 11% in New York today. We're back to, 111, I think it was. Let me be sure here before I say that. Dollars a barrel, 112 almost.
I saw dated crude hit 140 today.
Wasn't that something as that month turns over? Pretty remarkable. This could go on for weeks, maybe even months more. The president said last evening the strait will open naturally, which makes us think that there will not be an operation to force its reopening. What will be the longer-term corrosive effect of all of this?
It's not good. I mean, Kevin Hassett, as you heard a couple of weeks ago, said he's got a flow chart he's working through. The president's remarks last night suggest to me we have worked our way through the flow chart, and we are now at, find out and see what happens. Uncharted territory here as we navigate the Strait of Hormuz. As we look at global shortages in helium, we are looking at a chip shortage that could rival that of the 2022 period. As we look at global fertilizer shortages that will be orders of magnitude greater than the onset of Russia's war on Ukraine. As we look at jet fuel shortages in Europe, they are already canceling flights. Heathrow will be hammered. And even in the US and Canada, Amazon announced just this morning that they will be enacting a surcharge on all shippers that move things through North America. And so I think as this all unfolds, unfortunately for American consumers who thought they might be in the clear after the Supreme Court provided relief from those IEEPA tariffs, this is an even bigger wave of inflation coming.
Airlines are kind of the obvious first victims here when it comes to the doubling in jet fuel prices. But next earnings season, the next upcoming earnings season, we're going to start hearing in these conference calls about fuel surcharges in all different industries, right? If this continues in this direction.
I think it's already going to, given where diesel prices are. I mean, shipping and logistic inflation has really never come under management over the last year or two. Those costs are up tremendously post-pandemic. We really didn't get a hold on them. And with diesel prices up at $5, $6, $7 here in the next few months, stuff's going to get really expensive.
We've got a minute left. This is getting more depressing as we go, so it's almost over, Liz Pancotti. When's the recession?
I saw folks really tick up their estimates over the past week. Goldman's at 30, 40. I don't think that if you watched that speech last night that I did, I don't know how on the street, I don't know how you walk away and say the rest of the year's in the bag and we'll be okay. We'll be able to weather the storm. The market's got it priced in. I think if we're in this war here in July, August, we've got 3 more months of this, we're really looking at long-term damaging economic effects.
3 more months of this, says Liz Pancotti. I'll tell you, it's not great to think about, but it's always a pleasure to talk it out with somebody who knows what they're talking about.